probably 3 months, and he was already starting to try to molest me.
Father? Wait, stepfather, you said?
No, my real father. Yeah. We went to Europe for 3 years, lived in Europe, and that was really the only sanctity I had, because I lived with my step-grandparents, and my stepmother was there, and he was always away. So, but the minute he got back and was coming back to the States, he told my stepmother he wanted to bring me back with him because I needed to go to the gym. I had gained some weight because I love fish and chips. I love to eat. And he said, I'm taking her back with me. Well, I had no idea at that time, because we had actually moved to Europe before he actually started getting, sexually abusive. But he ended up flying me back. We got an apartment, and there wasn't a day go by that he didn't bother me. And then when they came back stateside and we moved into base housing, he was still doing it. He would wait for my stepmother to go shopping or something, and then he would come after me. And I just, at that point, I was ready to run away. I was being honest with you. I would have given anything for somebody to just take me and save me. And I think that's why I ended up with bad marriages, because anybody that showed me any ounce of attention and acted like they loved me, it was like I would latch on to them, and then they'd want to get married, and there I go, and one mistake after another. So
when this was going on with you, were you able to tell anyone? Were you able to tell your stepmom?
Yeah, I tried. In fact, when he would do it and be out of the room, I would go to her when she'd come home and tell her, and she's like, I don't want to hear this. You don't know what you're talking. He's just being loving. He's just being a loving father. That was her way to disassociate. So, no, I got no support. No support.
Oh, man. So, wow. Let me ask you on that, if you don't mind, because I've heard that more than once, that the kid, the daughter, Muslim's the daughter, goes to the mom, and the mom can't believe that her husband is doing this. And they either deny it, but they never go further than that. And I'm not saying, obviously it's not all women, but I've heard that more than once, where the daughter goes to the mom, and the mom, why do you think that is? And do you have any
well, I think personally, being a woman, and say being married, and something like that would come to me without prior knowledge, it would be hard to swallow, because the last thing you want to think is that someone you love and you care about and you've built your world around would do anything even close to doing something like that. And so you tend to block it, and you want to deny it, and it's denial. And if you think about it, it's kind of like excuse me, with my stepmother, I think it's almost like going through the stages of grief. She's gone through the denial. She's still questioning. I think in some respects she's accepted it, but she'll never admit to it or want to talk about it, because then that puts the guilt back on her.
Yes, because then she's partially to blame.
Yeah, she is.
Big time.
I do blame her in some respects.
Absolutely.
Because I had no one there to protect me.
Absolutely. Today, can kids, what would you recommend to a girl who's watching this who's maybe not that young? How old were you during that?
Well, 15, 16 years old.
Okay, so a girl 15, 16 years old today, they can go to their school counselor. I mean, where can they go?
I would go to school counselors. I think the one benefit that I think girls have today that we didn't have when I was that age was people are now becoming more receptive to this problem. They're hearing more about it. They're starting to see it more. And I think reality is finally biting. And so I think girls, or boys can be abused too.
Absolutely, yeah.
They have a better opportunity now to get support, whereas we didn't. In fact, I can remember running to the neighbors when my mother and stepfather were fighting, and I would run out of the house, and this is when I was 11, 12 years old, just young, and I would go to the neighbors for help, and they would close the door and wouldn't open the door and let you in. I mean, they didn't want anything to do with violence or helping somebody. And the police were out at our house so often they knew everybody by their first name. If that tells you anything.
Wow.
But yeah, it's the world has changed, and I think there's more of a acceptance that this really does happen, And so I think girls, but yeah, they need to talk. They need to be able to go to someone, and tell their story. They definitely do. And that's one of the reasons why I went to volunteer, is they needed somebody there to say, it's okay.
I can't imagine, number one, dealing with that, the past of that. And then I would think, not knowing, I would think that obviously time heals all wounds to some extent. But you, by volunteering your time to talk to these women that have just been raped, you're in it on a regular basis. How does that not, man, it's hard for you, not that you ever want to forget or it's possible to forget. I guess where I'm going with this is just me never having to deal with that, talking to a woman, trying to support a woman, that would be very hard for me to do. In other words, just the emotion that I would have to go through every day. How do you do it, knowing what you've been through in the past, and then still dealing with it with these other women? How do you deal with that emotionally? Because I know you've, Yvonne, and you're always upbeat, and it's not a facade, or at least I don't think it's a facade.
No. Well, I think one thing that helps me is my education, in healthcare. So running a facility, I ran a home health agency and a senior living villa, and you're dealing with families all the time, and you're dealing with death. In fact, I even took a course on death and dying.
Wow.
Trauma, took courses on that. How do you deal with trauma? How do you help other people deal with trauma? And so with my education and my own experiences, it gave me a resilient to, I got to go out there and help somebody. I got to, if nothing else, educate these victims that life isn't over. It's definitely not over. And give them pointers and show them, this is what I did. This is what this person has done. And look how we've overcome. And just them seeing that they know this is not just a person talking, a teacher or something. This is somebody that's lived it.
Absolutely.
And they know that I'm being sincere. And they can see me. I'm real.
Yeah.
I'm here. I have a record. I have great things. And like I told them, there's nothing you can't do if you just don't put you just got to put your mind to it. And you got to have faith. Faith has been my biggest, though. And I think that's why it's expressed that way in my story, is because if it hadn't been for God, I would have never survived.
Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
Talk about that a little bit. How do you... Faith in God, you mean prayer? I mean, tell me about what you...
Well, it seems to come better as you get older. You start understanding it more. But, I was raised Roman Catholic. And, I always felt... In fact, I get tickled because I went to a Catholic school for a year. And even to this day, Rob, and this is serious, I still shake when I see a nun. Do you know that feeling?
Yes.
It's like when I was in school, they would walk around and they always had this straight face, and they, if they caught me talking or something, they'd go, "Excuse me?"
That's right.
And they'd carry that ruler. Carry that ruler. And so, I had this fear of God, of these. In fact, they still do. If I see a habit, I just like freeze.
Yeah.
Excuse me, but I did believe, I had faith. And being through so many things as a child and experiencing close to death, there's been so many occasions in my life where I shouldn't be here. The normal average person would never be here. And so I knew in my heart, and going to talk to the priests and counselors, that God has you here for a reason. And apparently He's not done with you yet. And I kept reliving that in my mind. Okay, I've overcome death so many times. I've escaped it. I've been fortunate. I was lucky I didn't get killed, during the kidnapping. But
Yeah.
I've had husbands beat me to a bloody pulp. I've had parents beat me to a bloody pulp. So I've been through all of the pains. But I'm still here. And I do believe that in some respects it's like, am I a prophet? Am I somebody that's supposed to be bringing people? Maybe I'm bringing people closer to God. Maybe I'm helping Him, bring people to Him. But I truly believe that, and I've always have. And it's carried me through so many times.
I
so
imagine
many
you must
times.
get a great feel of satisfaction when you're speaking to a woman who has just, when you speak to them, were they, this may seem like a silly question, but were they just raped a week prior, or they?
Oh, we get to them immediately. In fact, I used to go visit the emergency rooms when they'd come in.
Wow.
I'll tell you the most heartbreaking. Rape, obviously, of any nature is horrible.
Yes.
But when it comes to small children, I think one of the rudest awakenings I ever saw when I first went to volunteer was finding that 6-month-old babies were being raped. 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds. We had one victim come in. She was only 12 and pregnant by her own father. And you see this all the time in this business, and yet we can't get public awareness. We cannot get people to support enough of trying to stop this, and I think that's why I got involved with the sex trafficking, because people need to know that this is happening, and it can happen to anybody. I didn't think I'd ever get kidnapped and raped, you know, but it happened. That was something that literally broke my heart, because who in their right mind would assault and molest a 6-month-old baby?
Their own baby.
Their own babies.
Even in someone else's baby, but I mean their own baby is really
and
sick.
I think that was the hardest part of volunteering, was seeing the young ones. You know, it's hard enough to see an adult and what they go through, and some of them would be pretty horrific, but when you see these children coming in that have been raped, and a lot of them are being trafficked. That's what's sad. You know, they're being sold. And it's kind of like something that was revealed in a lot of the information, and I do a lot of research and reading on the subject. At one time, drugs and gun running was the highest profit for criminal, you know, syndicates.
Yeah.
Well, that's been bypassed now by sex trafficking and human trafficking. It is over a $250 billion industry, and the sad thing is America's their #1 client. That just tears me up.
It is sickening. And I just saw the movie Sound of Freedom yesterday, and they gave the stats at the beginning and at the end. I had no idea, because you think it's like once in a blue moon. And the scary thing about this movie, or the hard part about I think everyone should see the movie. I think I was telling you about this when you came, but at the beginning they're showing clips from cameras that are in the street, and they're showing people drive up, guys, and just kids are playing, and they come and they grab one of the kids, and man, they take off. Such heart. They grabbed one kid, again, it's one of the real footage, and the kid is trying to fight, a little kid, because he knows it's wrong, and he's gone. And then the worst part is there is a demand for these kids.
Well, and I think where people tend to not realize either is the fact that a lot of it happens right here in this country. It's not just immigrants and illegals coming into this country, or they're grabbing them from other countries. This country alone has people living here, citizens of this country, that actually are selling their own children to make money, because they either have a drug habit or they have debt, you know, gambling debts, whatever the case is. But to learn that you even have people in your own neighborhoods that are selling their kids. And the sad thing is, the reason they make so much money is when it comes to drugs and product, you can only sell that once.
Yep.
Children can be sold up to 10 times per day. One child. It's pretty sad.
It is sick, man. And
Most of them.
I imagine a lot of that starts with child pornography. I mean, I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
I guess. Say, to me, okay, so again, people think pornography, it's no big deal. A bunch of, it's an adult thing. A lot of women, they want to do that. The ones that are in the industry. And then you watch these women that are no longer in the industry, and they'll do stuff on YouTube and tell you what it was like, why they started. Most times their background, and again, you've been blessed, Yvonne, because a lot of times their background was abuse, come from a terrible background, a terrible family. They either end up running away or something, and then some jerk is there to help them, and they help them with modeling, which is not modeling, and before you know it, they're doing porn. And then these idiots are out there watching a porn, thinking it's just a girl who wants to do what she does. And if they watch these women, again, off of that and they tell you the stories of what it's like to work in the industry and how they're treated and how they did not want to be there, how they're drugged and all this other stuff. But there's such a demand for porn, and then
And child pornography.
and that's man, you figure that would be an easy thing for FBI and cops to follow, because they can just, you're not hidden. No matter where you are on the internet, you are not hidden, right? Because everybody has an IP address, and I know that there's gateways and stuff that stop that. But if you're downloading or you're watching it, you figure they would know the area, the part of town, and a lot of these jerks probably have nothing on their computer, so they would know. It's just amazing that it's that it's out there, man.
Well, it's a sad world we live in, obviously, but the key is education, getting out and educating the public, trying to help those that are in trouble and need help. And yeah, you're right, I am blessed, but I will tell you, I'm very stubborn. You being Italian, you know what Italian women are like. But I do think sometimes, and I get frustrated because I hear, like you watch a lot of these programs like Dr. Phil or whatever, and you see these people come on board that they're trying to help because they have come from an abusive family, or they've been, subject to having families that, are drug users or whatever, or they're beaten, and so that's the reason why they're bad. They're having their own bad life because they had a bad life. I have to be honest with you, I get really frustrated when I hear that. To me, that's the most unexcusable excuse to use for your own habits, is by saying it was because you were abused as a child. Because that just shows you have no inner strength. And again, could be faith, but I think being a child, going through an abusive life and going through abusive marriages and things that have happened, it taught me to become like, it's kind of like when you tell somebody, don't do that. I'm one of those, don't tell me not to do it, because now I'm going to do it. Okay? So, and I was that way as a kid. I was kind of a rebel. But I think I'm just trying to prove to the world that, no, you don't have to fall in that stigma or that pattern. Prove people wrong. By God, I'm so sick of people feeling sorry for me because, oh, she was abused and she was this. It's like, don't feel sorry for me. I'm a good person. I made myself a good person.
Yeah.
And if we can go out and help other people make themselves good persons, then that's something I've accomplished. Yeah. And that's what I want. I want as a legacy is that somewhere out there I've touched somebody and I've helped them.
I'm sure you've done that a number of times. How long have you been involved with helping women?
Since I was raped.
Wow.
And it was because I was approached by a counselor then, that she said, I was a musician, besides a career person and working, but I had a band and I used to perform. Wow, and I was never afraid, to stand in front of people to do things. You kind of develop that, but I had people approach me if I would be willing to speak and talk to kids and go to schools and stuff, and I said, sure, if it's going to help, I'm there. And the band that I had was a show band, and it tended to lean towards entertainment for families. And that's when people knew who I was. I had a pretty good presence where I lived because I was always in marketing and radio and doing this and doing that. So when I had that happen, it broke a lot of hearts. But it also brought attention to the fact that, this could happen to somebody that I know.
Yeah.
And then to know that because I was in the healthcare field, would you be willing to talk to these kids and these women, And I'm like, yeah, why not? Because I've learned that talking about it helps you heal.
Yeah, I can see that.
It really does.
And also you're helping them, number two, or number one, you're helping them. And also, again, to me, whenever I'm going through a tough time with whatever, nothing compared to what you've been through, man. But when I'm going through a tough time, if I meet someone who's been there, had money problems or had a problem with mistrust or whatever, when you hear someone else has been through it, it just makes you realize you're not alone.
No,
you're not dumb. This didn't happen because of a mistake you did or anything like that.